Welcome to Changing Suits. We're your hosts, Bal
and Taj, discussing the latest news, views, and general life for us Western Asians.
Follow us on Instagram and Facebook, changing_suits, and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Hi, welcome to Changing Suits. My name's Bal.
And my name's Taj.
So today we wanted to discuss an article that we saw on the news a few days ago. So it was about a little boy who had been going through bullying and had his finger stuck in a fence and he had to get it amputated. Now, this got us thinking about bullying as a whole. So what is bullying first? What would you take bullying as, Taj?
I would take it how the victim feels. The bully's not going to feel that they're bullying. Who's going to admit that they're bullying? It's the emotions of the victim if they feel that they're being victimized for any reason, picked on.
You said that the bully's not going to admit that they're bullying, but they are aware that they are bullying, right? Whether they admit it or not.
I think they are aware, to be honest. I think it would be very far and few cases where they're just not aware that they're bullying. They might not label it as bullying, to be honest. Who would want to? It's a horrible word with loads of horrible connotations to it.
Yeah, but then what is bullying? Because I was by chance talking to someone. I didn't know we were going to do this podcast today, recording this. But I was discussing this with one of my friends. And she's a teacher. And we were just talking about some students who were picking on a little girl. Well, I say picking. They obviously wouldn't see it as picking. But we analysed the situation, as you normally do. And we thought, well, the reason this little girl is saying certain things to another little girl is because she's not happy with certain things in her life. Now, by the way, these are kids. They're very small people. And then I was like, well, then surely, although the thing is with that person where she's not happy about certain things, she is saying things and demeaning someone else. So I would think that's bullying. Now, yeah, you agree with that, right?
Yeah.
But the interesting thing is, my friend is a teacher, and she was like, no, it's not. I wouldn't consider it as bullying. It's kids learning their boundaries, learning how to use their voice. And I was like, okay, so what is bullying then?
Then you could say that, for example, domestic violence, that's a form of bullying. You could turn that around and say it's, for most of the time, I'm not saying that men don't get abused, but let's just put a scenario in place and say that basically if a man abuses a woman, it might be because he finds that he's just trying to protect her. That's not bullying. So it's is seeing it from the other point of view and saying, well, no, I'm trying to protect you. I'm making sure no harm happens to you. So that's why I need to control what you do so you don't make the wrong decision. That's a form of bullying.
Well, isn't this the whole thing with law and politics where it's the perspective? And there's always a loophole. I mean, we look at, I'd hate to talk about it, but Partygate. We've had photos coming out of Boris drinking at we'll call it a gathering, not a party, right? But it's the perspective. What loophole can we jump through to then change what the scenario actually is, right?
I mean, I think it is important to look what's behind the reason of why the bullying is bullying. For example, again, there's someone in my daughter's class and that particular child bullies children around her.
But what do you mean bullies? And this is the problem. Because you're taking it as bullying because your daughter's obviously said something.
Well, calls them names and is just not very nice to other children. And apparently, but this is what my daughter's perspective, that even the teachers are finding it hard to manage what's happening. Now, in that situation, I said to my daughter, there might be something going on at home for her, and that's why she's bullying. But that is not up to her to sort out. I said, that's not your issue to sort out. That's the teacher's issue to sort out. Just stay away from the child.
Well, this is the thing. I mean, yeah, although you're saying, there's a reason the person's doing it, that doesn't still forgive the fact that
No,
they're acting up.
you can't say just because that's the reason. I don't think you can say, oh, don't worry, it's not the child's fault. I think you need to investigate what's happening. Bullying's bullying. You still, with the victim, you support the victim. No matter what the story is, it's important to support the victim and support the bully and find out what the background of why this is happening.
But the problem is, and it's the age-old problem of how do schools deal with it? Because let's be clear, we have been through, even when we were kids, there were people that we knew that got bullied. I got bullied. I was at one point a bully as well, thinking back at it. And it was a case of, well, how are the school dealing with it? And to be frank, they weren't dealing with it. They'd ignore the situation. Yeah, they might talk to the person, but then that's literally, I remember when I was going through it, I remember the conversation that we went through, but that's all it was. There was no follow up. There was nothing done about it afterwards. It was just one conversation. And I don't know how much has changed now. And it doesn't sound like that much has, to be fair.
I don't think it has. I think what schools are more scared of is Ofsted than what's happening with the situation. And there's been loads of situations where that has happened, where an external party has had to fight for the child that's being bullied. And that's the only reasons actions have happened in that school. It shouldn't need a third party to come in and talk to the school to resolve the issue. In cases of where there is some sort of assault, etc., that's taken place, the police should be brought in. I
But
feel that it's important.
do you know, it's really interesting, actually. I read something, just on a side note, because, I like doing these side notes. I saw another news article today. I don't know if you remember, a few months ago, there was a court trial going on in regards to the police going into a school and basically strip searching a student. Now, apparently, it's happened a second time. I read the news article today with the child then afterwards. So she got handcuffed. She was. I don't want to go into details because it's disgusting. But basically, it's really affected her mental health.
Strip searched. I'd like to know the story behind. Obviously, I don't need you to tell me because you don't want to go into it.
Well, the person was
But
15 years old. I just don't. Anyway, that was just a side note. Like, some of the stuff you read, you're like, oh my god, how
that
did?
is that is really severe. There
And
must be
what's
a reason why they've gone that far.
and what's worse is,
Mm.
well, no, there was male officers in the room when she was strip searched, from what I've read on the article.
That is wrong, point
But
blank.
this goes back to bullying, though. But this time, it's a person in power
In authority, yeah.
rather than, if it was student versus student. Obviously, they're on the same sort of level. Whereas this one's an adult, or an adult in a very high position, who is bullying, I guess, a
It is
child.
because that person in authority, you'd expect them to act in the correct way, in the correct manner. And you almost like, okay, you know what you're doing. I'll have to do whatever you say because you're in this position of authority. So I should respect what you're doing.
And again, it goes back to things like, I don't know, going back to the question of what is bullying, and we look at the perspective of, oh, is it actually bullying? Is it not bullying? And where do you draw the line? Same thing happens in rape cases, doesn't it? I mean, what is it? I heard a percentage the other day. 98% of rape cases, it doesn't go to trial. Yeah, it's crazy. So even if
Yeah.
you do complain, does anything happen with that complaint?
So should we go back to our own situations of where the bullying took place?
Hmm.
With me, I was pretty much bullied from secondary school, and it was all to do with just being. I was a very quiet child, and obviously vulnerable
Do you think
and
that
easy target.
do you think that affects who someone decides to bully then? Because you don't tend to find those louder people that they
I
don't tend
think
to
there
get bullied,
is some
right?
sort of personality thing. If you get someone that answers back, you're not going to go to bully them
Mm.
because you don't want someone that answers you back. It's someone that's vulnerable and that won't answer back and just kind of accepts it, and doesn't fight back.
All right, then let's discuss your experience. So what did you go through? Sorry, and I interrupted earlier, but I won't interrupt this time.
Oh, it's not like you, Bal, not to interrupt.
Go on, carry on.
Anyway.
No, no comment.
Anyway, no. So in at secondary school, I experienced bullying. It wasn't physical, but it was mental bullying. Would you call it? It was just names here and there, and
But see,
really,
see, this is the other thing. You know, when you say mental rather than physical bullying, you know, with physical, and I know this is something that's changed in law and things like that. With physical, it's a case of you can sort of quantify it, whereas with mental
but then you're
bullying, it's really
saying,
no. I'm
yeah,
not. I'm not saying that it's not bullying. That's not what I'm saying. But it becomes really harder because it's more
yeah,
quality.
you can't, yeah, as in, like, if you get bullied and you get hit, there's a mark, so you can
Yeah,
say, so there's something to prove that there was bullying.
and
Whereas
this is where
with
the
mental,
problem.
yeah, I
This is the
mean,
problem with any thing where it's mental health. It's, you know, is there a scale? What do you judge it on? And that's where the difficulty is with
yeah, it's not,
anything in mental health, isn't it?
yeah, it's not like you can take your brain out and say, okay, it's affected this bit, this bit, this bit. It's
Mm.
affected my future. It's affected how I choose things in life. You are right, but then, like you're saying, things have progressed, and mental bullying, would you call it, is a type of bullying, just as domestic abuse,
Yeah.
coercive
Mm.
behavior is a form of bullying.
Yeah.
But yet the law didn't recognize it. It's only been recently since even the law has recognized, mental abuse as
Domestic violence. Yeah.
domestic. Yeah, I couldn't get the words in. Domestic abuse. So, what you were saying before, is it a type of personality of
Oh,
a
by the
person?
way, we've totally gone. What was your experience? You know
Oh,
me. I'm
sorry,
just
I'm trying to sidestep, aren't I? So yeah, mine was, I was at school and I used to be called various names, and I was a shy, quiet type. I didn't know what to say to it, so it was like, yeah, you're
yeah.
killing me inside. And I never spoke to it about it to anyone. I remember I used to come home and I used to think, I just want to go to sleep. I just want to spend my day going to sleep and getting over it.
Really?
Yeah.
Did not know that.
I
How old were you when that happened?
Secondary school, you would be about 11. Yeah, 11 when you're in secondary school. So I used to do my homework, just go to sleep for as long as I can, just to finish the day. Um,
But
and it was,
why was it? Because then once you're at home, see, this is the difference with bullying nowadays compared to back in our days, where at least when you left school, the bullying would stop. Whereas, as we know from previous podcasts, where it's different now. Even when you get home, the bullying continues on social media, which is
that's
a whole other area of like craziness in itself.
I mean, yeah, like we say, oh, you can shut the laptop, you can shut off your phone, but that you're not going to do that. It's almost like having an addiction, looking at your phone, and you don't want to be the person that's left out from
Yeah.
a conversation. So you're going to constantly look at it. All this conversation you might be in a group, and this whole conversation might be happening without you. So when you get to school, for example, you would have missed all this bullying that you hadn't seen, but
On that point, I mean, I've had it where, you know, having been in public spaces, public positions, where I know people on social media might have been saying something, but because I wasn't involved in that sort of social media thing, it didn't affect me. And I suppose that's where the difficulty is of, although I'm saying this, nowadays it's not like that because everyone is so aware of social media, which I get it. But anyway, going back to your experience, so you want to get through the day, but
get
that
through
was
the day, sleep through the day, like for as long as I could, and just get past it. And it carried on for years. I think all the way till, I don't even know which. I think it must have been when I was in year three. What would that be? Seven, eight, nine. Year nine, because it's all different now. Because it's not year one, year two, year three. It's year nine. I think it must have been roundabout. And then when my set of friends changed and I got that support, I didn't have really friends in the class. It was more when I went out to play. I don't think you'd play at secondary school, but you know what I mean. Have the
break
breaks,
time.
break time.
Yes.
Sorry, the break time. When I had those break times, then I would mingle with the new set of friends that I had. So,
See, and this is why it's important to have that support circle as well, isn't it then? Because then you're not that isolated child with no one there. I remember actually there used to be a child in our class who at that point SEN wasn't a thing, right? Whereas now it's recognized if a child needs extra support, they need extra support, and it wasn't like that. Now, what ended up happening, that child did need extra support, but they would get bullied. And being the rest of the class, everyone would laugh. I mean, I was part of it. I'm not saying that I wasn't, because everyone needs to be part of the whole thing. So I'm not going to pretend that I wasn't part of it.
we weren't educated enough. I think
Mm.
the teachers weren't educated. Did they know enough about it at the time?
No, I don't
Possibly
think
not.
so.
Possibly
No.
not. Then they weren't educated. We weren't educated. So that's why you would. And I remember actually, we used to have this music teacher. And now thinking back at it, we're at an age where he would have been. The whole class, and this used to happen to him pretty much in every class that he used to run. The class used to bully the teacher.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I had
You
that
know
in
who
one of
I'm
mine.
talking? It's the music. Do you remember the music teacher?
No, 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 it wasn't. Mine's was the economics teacher, Vajara.
And the thing is, at the time, you think it's funny because
Yeah.
it's like, oh, the whole class is doing it together. I was there as well. Um,
But
but now,
that was the challenge with like being a student. The whole thing I remember like was if you found that one teacher, you'd want to push them so far to see if they'd cry. And I remember that because we did that with the English teacher.
oh God,
So
that's
I
so
don't
horrible.
remember. I
Mm.
don't know if do you remember at the back of the school there used to be cabins where
Yeah.
there was two levels. Do you remember that? And I think our older sister was in the class. I think
Oh
below.
God, yeah, I remember this incident. Yeah.
Do you remember this? And we had an English teacher, and she was actually quite a good English teacher, like now looking back at it. But I remember, like, anytime she'd turn around, we'd hit the floor, so it disturbed the people doing the lesson downstairs. I think something like that. And it went on like for quite a while. And it was funny because everyone was part of this whole thing. The students were all on one side, and the teacher was by themselves. So it's the same thing. It's about being part of a clique, isn't it, really?
Yeah, but the sad thing is, it makes it, and to think what kind of mental health issues must have come from that situation of this teacher. Maybe this teacher would never have taught again after their experience. But that, again, there's an embarrassment to it because it's the flip, it's the younger people doing that to someone that's meant to have a position of authority.
Authority, yeah.
And then you would think, that's now thinking in the shoes of that teacher, you'd think, oh my God, I'm this older person. I can't control my class. How are my peers going to look at me?
Well, the other thing is being a parent. I mean, this weekend I've had a really tough time with my son who just, I don't know what he's going through, but basically he doesn't listen to a thing. We've just been butting heads the whole weekend. And it comes down to the same thing. But again, going back to what I previously said about this conversation I had with my friends, where he's obviously exploring his boundaries and figuring out his own character, and that's why he's doing it. So then, is it not the same for students that might be doing it to a teacher, seeing where their boundaries are? And is it then bullying, or is it just
See, that's
character development?
that's the thing. It's what you phrase it. Like we've talked about domestic abuse. That's bullying. Racism. That's bullying. So there's different names given to what bullying is. Racism, but any sort of abuse is a form of bullying. And the victim is made to feel small and inferior to the person that's the perpetrator, we could say.
Bullying, yeah,
Yeah, bullying.
perpetrator, yeah.
Yeah, bullying. So in that situation, the victim doesn't want to um, tell the authorities or tell the teachers because they feel ashamed. There's that part
Mhm.
of shame of being bullied, which is a sad thing, but it happens.
Okay, so going back to your situation, how was it resolved?
It wasn't really. It was just because there was a particular girl, she left the school. She was a very loud vocal person, and even the teachers had problems controlling
Hmm.
her behaviour. And then the group of bullies just kind of
Dispersed. See, this
dispersed.
is the thing. It's really interesting because it comes down to one person. And I had the same thing where it could be termed as bullying, where one person was controlling what everyone else was doing. Oh, don't go and play with that person. Or this has become a little group. This is my little clique. And then that person gets left out today because of whatever the reason is. right? And this is where, and we had the same thing. And we had one meeting where it was discussed, because I don't remember how it got out, but we had that discussion, and that's literally it. Nothing actually changed. I don't even actually, do you know what? Saying that, to be fair on the teacher, I do remember there was a turning point. And I think that might have been the turning point where it did reduce, and everyone, it, I suppose, wasn't then bullying. I don't know. It's really weird.
See, the other thing is, so you have this victim, you have the bullies, and you have the people watching. So why don't the people watching ever step in? Why do you think? Because this could be, let's, all right,
But then it goes back to what is bullying, and the fact that they might not be seeing it as bullying, the victim seeing it as bullying, the abuser is, to
but
be
for
fair,
example, we've had examples of, for example,
for
Sikh
example.
boys that have had their turbans pulled off and abused, and that's physical abuse. But the people around them, I don't think there's been any case that I've read where anyone has come and supported that victim. So it's almost like a gang cult. Like, what would you call it? A pack.
But then do you not think that that comes from above? I mean, you look at what's happening in certain countries where you're not allowed to wear the hijab, you're not allowed to wear turbans. Would that not be also be a form of bullying, because then you're controlling what someone else is doing?
But is that bullying? That's the question.
Well, this is the thing. What is bullying?
So would you call, like you're saying, the law a bully? Because you're what do you call it when, like, Hitler and Putin, oh God, I'm turning it to you. What kind of authority figure is that? Dominate? No, what is the word I'm looking for?
A dominatrix.
No, what would you call a Hitler and a Putin? They
Here
are.
we are. Okay, bullying. Seek to harm, intimidate, or coerce someone perceived as vulnerable.
Yeah, so we were right according to the dictionary, tick box for us,
To
that a
treat someone in a
victim
cruel, insulting.
victim is vulnerable. You pick the person that's vulnerable. So let's go on to the next stage. What do we teach our kids? Do we teach them to stick up for
Okay,
themselves?
so from my experience, where I felt like when I was bullied, someone controlled me, right? So I have actually had this discussion with my son where I've understood there's a child that may be doing the same sort of thing. It sounds the same. It probably isn't the same, but I'm just relating it to my own experience. And obviously, that's what you can do. And my advice to him has always been, well, you shouldn't be playing with him. If he's causing someone else to be left out, you go play with that someone else. But although saying that, it works in our time, it was like that as well. Like, you wouldn't want to go and play with that one child, because then you'd be like, oh, you're with like that one child who was left out, and it's not the cool gang to be in. If you see, and it's the same thing, it's a repeating cycle, because he was like, no, I do actually want to play with who I thought was a bully, and I'm not saying that he is,
Mm.
but the more controlling figure.
But then is this again? There was this culture of, when we got into secondary school, everyone broke up into their groups. There was the people, black people, there were the Asian people, and the white people. I'll probably not use the PC words, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And in year 7, get it right, year 7, it was always the hierarchy. It was the white girl, blonde girl, who would
Yes, you're
be
right.
white blonde girl would be at the top
Yeah.
of the pyramid. Then comes down to the others. You'd
Yeah.
have a white, or actually, I don't think it really mattered so much with boys.
Do you know
Um,
what? That's no. I think you're right, because then there was that always, like the American films, like it's always the head cheerleader and the football player. You're right now. Think about it. That's exactly how it was in our year.
and then you get the Asians at the bottom. We did have an Asian popular guy, but he wasn't at the top. He was popular, but not the top popular person.
Do you know what? That's really interesting, actually, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think it still goes on. I think there's still that thing of where there's the white blonde
Yeah.
girl that will be at the top. And the reason why I mention this is because my daughter said, I don't know if this was quite right of me, but said that a certain child gets picked for everything. And I said to her, generally in life, the lesson of life is, as an Asian person, you're going to have to work harder than your counterparts, because you have to prove something extra. I
Hmm.
don't know if that was the right thing for me to say to her at age of 10, but it's true.
But
You will
then,
have to work harder. And when do I say it?
see, I don't think there's anything wrong with it saying it, because in all truth, that is exactly how it is. I don't know why we bring our kids up to think this world is fair, because it's not. For those people who think it's fair, they're probably the ones that don't have anything to worry about. Whereas the people that will face racism, bullying, whatever, they're the ones that will have to worry about it. So
I
I don't
mean,
think it's wrong that you've said it.
for example, our parents wouldn't have told us, not that they wouldn't have done it out of like being horrible or something. I don't think we were taught to stand up for ourselves. Although we did go to martial arts and we were taught how to defend ourselves, we weren't taught how to stand up for ourselves. And that might stem from when they came over from the East, and they had to basically put up with what they did. All right, they did do protests, and I'm not saying that they didn't, but they had to put up with certain things. They might have come from top paying jobs and had to come here and do manual labor and
Yeah.
just had to get on with it. You done what you were told because you just had to make your money, and that kind of sieved through to the kids. Our generation is just don't complain, just get on with it. This is what's on your plate.
And this is the thing, isn't it? I mean, we've discussed this. Where we don't complain, people on, and it's not anyone else's fault, even if you're not going through it and you're the person on the other side. If someone isn't saying, no, what's going on here is wrong, then how are they supposed to become aware as well? So it's not really their fault either. But you're right. I mean, we've become a generation who just, or a community that doesn't complain.
I mean,
And it
like,
just
yeah.
causes more problems. Yeah.
I mean, one of the things that quite a lot of our guests have said, and we've said it as well, whenever someone mispronounces our name, we're like, oh, okay, don't worry
Yeah.
about it.
But it
My
does matter. Yeah.
my husband was today telling my son actually about how he got his nickname, and he was reading a book about chocolate because his nickname's Pod.
Okay.
You might have thought, where is it coming from? And his actual name is Party. Um, and I go, why did you allow everyone to call you Pod? And he goes, because it was just easier to say that name,
Yeah.
and people couldn't pronounce his name because
And it's not even that hard to say. I mean, why do we accept that kind of rubbish of no one can pronounce the name? It's not that hard.
it's because again, this accepting, hey, it's all right, don't worry. I do it. I still do it. Oh, you can't say Tajinder, just say Taj.
I do it. I mean, we've got Taj and Bao on this. I mean, it's proof.
Yeah,
But
you're like, oh, it will slide off the tongue easier. You'll remember us easier. Don't worry, as long as it makes it easier for you. Don't worry that my name is this. Um, as long as your life's easy.
but then do you know what? Going back to what the subject is of bullying, in that case, we're blaming, if we're sort of looking at the whole how we're relating it, we're blaming the victim for not standing up for themselves then. No?
No, I think we're looking back at where it stemmed from. Like
Mm.
it did stem. I'm not trying to blame our parents because our parents have had to go through so much, and we're lucky in the positions that we are. But I'm saying they didn't have that time, or they didn't have that knowledge, actually, of teaching us how to stand up for ourselves in a situation like that. Um, for example, another example is when in my working life, I faced racism, and I didn't complain about it, or I brought it up, but I didn't make a whole complaint about it because I could have gone to the HR department and said this wasn't handled in the proper way, but I didn't want to make a fuss. I didn't want to give everyone, and I kept saying this to my manager. I didn't want to make extra workload for everyone. I just wanted. I don't want anything to do with it. Just leave
But
me alone.
but do you think that it's gone the other way, where people now, if they do complain and say that R word, it becomes a, oh my God, we've got to deal with it now just in case it gets out. So it's gone
No,
maybe the other way? No?
no. I don't think that happens. You might get the odd story here and there in the paper, and then you get comments. I must admit, I do read the comments in papers. I'm
What,
not going
Daily
to.
Mail?
Don't. I knew you were going to reveal. I was going to say, don't reveal what papers
I
I
have
read.
to say, can I just say, I mean, you know, on just by chance, I was looking at this uh, on Facebook, obviously, the Sun articles. Oh my God. Like they always make it, the headlines are always the worst video because this happened. And you watch a video and it's like, nothing's actually happened. I'm
Yeah,
going to
but then
stop.
you watched it.
No, I'm going to stop. I've watched 2 over the last 2 days. I'm
Yeah,
not watching it.
but they grabbed the title. Anyway, we're regressing from what
Yeah,
we wanted
sorry.
to talk about.
Sorry.
So yeah, they didn't know how to handle it. It was best that I kept quiet, and I did keep quiet. Again, another bully that's won the battle because I didn't complain. I could have made it bigger. I could have made it a bigger issue for everyone, but I didn't. I just brush it under the carpet. Don't worry about my feelings. And I am traumatized still to this very day of what happened. Um, but it's like, don't worry, don't worry. I'll mention it, but it's like, don't worry. Okay, let's move on to the next thing. Get
But
over it,
then
kind of thing.
how do you mean that you're traumatized by what happened?
Because I keep replaying what happened and how I should have handled it differently.
But
Um,
but is
but
that being
but it was a repeat of a situation that I had gone through 15 years ago,
okay?
and I thought I would have handled it different now, but I still didn't. I was still the victim.
Explain.
So 15 years ago, I went through bullying, as in proper horrible bullying, where there was a guy in my team who used to basically talk about Asians and how he didn't like them, how and he showed me a picture of himself in front of a KKK building, and it was just taunting.
And what
Um,
about now? So you said that you're going through a situation now, or
I
you've been
went
through.
through a situation where it was because we were in lockdown. So it's funny, bullying can happen online as well. The person that was the perpetrator didn't was would not look at me when I was in meetings with that person, but
Oh
would
my
look
God.
at other
Mm.
people. It was that blatant. And there was a reason, because as soon as I came on and spoke, that person did not want to look at me.
Oh really?
The
And what
person
did you
didn't even.
do? What did you do in that situation? Because that was more recent. How did you deal with that?
So I went to hire people in like management and stuff like that.
So you
Um,
did deal with it differently than you did
I
last time
did
then.
no, because I went to management last time as well. They didn't know how to deal with it last time.
And what did
So
they do this time then? Still couldn't deal with it.
no, they did try, but I should. They did try. I have to admit, but I just don't think that they were armed with the skills to deal with it. And I should have gone to HR, and I should have taken it further.
This is something I was discussing with a friend of mine. Well, same friend I was talking about the bullying thing. And I don't know if it's a community thing either. And I'm
Mm.
going to say it is. I don't know. And listeners could let us know if it is a community thing as well. But basically, my friend is a white lady who there was basically an issue that came up and she called it out. And many of the other people who were Asian were like, oh, are you sure you want to call it out? And it was completely, she was right. She did call it out. She was right to call it out because it was not acceptable if it was true, right? So she dealt with it really well. But the rest of us, like the Asian people, were like, oh, are you sure this person's going to get in trouble? And I said it to her today, completely the right thing to do. If that's what happened, then it wasn't the choice that you made of dealing with it. It was the choice that that person made of doing it.
I think that's the thing that needs to be stumped in our minds. It's they made the choice to act like that. So why are we scared to
Yeah.
come forward and say, "Hey, you acted like that, so now you should basically get, what would you say, the treatment back, or not the treatment back,
Well, it
but
needs to be investigated at the very
yeah,
least.
you should be investigated." And why did that happen?
Mm,
It was your behavior that was the problem, not my behavior.
yeah. And this is the thing. It's is it a community issue where we do just brush it under the carpet? In which case, we're wrong in doing it. It's our fault, and it might be from a previous generation, but it doesn't matter. We're the next generation. We should be saying actually what's going on is wrong and raising awareness about these things.
I mean, the way that I'm dealing with it, I'm trying to, although I didn't deal with it, I'm trying to give skills to my children to deal with it and trying to make them more confident in themselves. Um, the funny thing is, I can't say I'm not a confident person. I think it's just certain situations that I shy away from.
Mm,
But I'm trying to teach my kids to know about themselves, and if someone does bully them, call them out for it.
yeah.
But it does help to lead by example, I would say.
No, it's always tough. The tough thing, the other thing is, I mean, I was reading an article a bit earlier. I think you sent it to me of a little boy who hung himself because of bullying. And someone put a post out on that. I think it was a family member, and they were saying it's not about resilience. The child was resilient. It's about raising awareness about, and it's true. I mean, we always say, oh, the victim should be more resilient. Well, no, it's not that. It's the perpetrator that shouldn't be such an asshole, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
So,
there's so many cases of bullying taking place in schools, like we were saying, and it's still not dealt with.
yeah.
More scared of Ofsted than
But then,
anything else.
what would you want a school to do about it then? Because that's the hard bit, isn't it?
I'd want them to come together and discuss it with the parents. But the other thing is, if the bully's parents aren't bothered, where do you go from there? I mean, if it's an older child, yes, you can go to the police. But what do you do with a 7, 8-year-old if their parents are like, no, my child's this, they're perfect?
But this is the other thing. I mean, how often do you now find? I don't know if it's just people I know. Like if someone said to me, and they called me in, they said your child's bullying, I would be like, I'd genuinely be horrified, and I would go home and have a go at that child. I mean, there's been cases in the past where I'm obviously looking at Facebook again, where someone has made the child, they must have found out separate, and they made the child go up to that other child and beg for forgiveness and things like that, which is like,
I think that's
whoa, that's
brilliant.
crazy, and it is good because you're teaching that child what they're doing is wrong.
Yeah.
Um, but this is what I'm saying. Surely a lot more parents now are like, oh my god, if someone's seeing my child as a bully, then my child is going to sit there and listen to the lecture, and if he doesn't go and at least apologize, that's how I'd react. I would have thought, but I could be wrong. I don't know.
Yeah, but that was the case with my child when she was saying there's a certain person that's a bully. I said, well, you don't be like that person. You need to be higher than that and think you're not going to be like that. You don't want to upset someone else. It's
Mm,
important that you don't upset someone else, but it's important that person doesn't upset you either.
mm.
So it's about self-care and it's about caring for others. But I don't think there are, I think that, sorry, there are quite a lot of parents that would say, no, 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 my child wouldn't do this. No, you're wrong. I won't believe in it.
Mm.
I would
There,
question my child. It's not that I'm saying that I don't believe my child, but
well
as a
then,
parent,
well then, where from a school's perspective would you go if the parent isn't accepting what you're saying? Then where do they go?
then it's a case of, well, then I think if it is affecting the victim, then they should think about getting rid of the child. Or if there's other things that are going on in the home, then they would probably report them to
But do you know what ends up happening?
social
If
workers,
they,
child services.
I don't know if this is correct, but if there was a case like that and a school was to report it, then it probably goes on their record, the school's record as well, that they've got a child like this. In which case, it probably brings some kind of figures or targets down
It's
as
all
well.
about
I
figures.
think. I don't know if I'm correct about that, but I would have thought there was something like that.
I don't think there is, to be honest.
Oh, right.
Unless I think they're more worried about it coming out in press than anything else.
I'm going to find out about that actually, and I'll let you know because I know someone that could answer that question.
Yeah, I don't think that's the case. I don't think you find out if, for example, if we're saying if it gets reported to the social services, you wouldn't find out because that's a private matter. You wouldn't reveal that
Mm.
data breach, basically.
Yeah, this is the thing. We don't actually have a true answer because we can say, yeah, exclude that child, but at what level is the bullying to that extent where a child does get excluded? Really? I mean, if it was a case of the person called someone a name, three times, is that acceptable? No, it's not acceptable, but is that enough to get a
Then you
child out
can,
of school
I
or
suppose,
what?
actually thinking about it, going back to that question, then you could deal with it. The child loses playtime. Then you could do it with your own rules, loses playtime and stuff like that. That's how you could deal with it, actually, if
We
it's
need
not
to
supported by parents.
do you know what? This is something that we need to research. So we've done it from our perspective. I suppose we shouldn't really say, "Oh, school should be doing this," because there will be a policy in place, and it would be interesting. And I will find out myself what those policies are because I think that's really important. I mean, we've been through times where, you know, someone that we know has been bullied. Everyone has. Everyone knows. It's just, and it is very upsetting. But it's just from a family's perspective, what do you do? I mean, one thing we did when one of our siblings was bullied, I mean, we've all been through it, to be fair, was got them to do martial arts. And I still stand by the fact that we should be getting our kids to do martial art. And it's not about the resilience. I'm not saying that it's about the victim should be the one that should. I still think the perpetrator should definitely be the one that sorts themselves out.
Yeah.
But I have found, like, kids going to do martial arts and things like that just helps their confidence a bit more. That's what I found.
I mean, martial arts is about controlling yourself, and it's not about going out there and fighting anyone. It's if you're put in a situation, they always teach, don't do the first punch, don't do the first strike. It's about protecting yourself. And I think it is important to protect yourself. But like we said, it's not always physical. So again, it's about how we do it verbally as well, how we build up that confidence in our child to learn to step away from situations as well.
Yeah, it's a really tough one, especially when now we're looking at it from a parent's point of view. It's very easy to say, oh, we should have done this, should have done that. Well, we're in that position now. What is it that we're doing to firstly stop our kids from being bullies to others and dealing with if they got bullied? And it's a really hard one. And I think it's really important to make connections with other parents in the class. Because I have found, like, the more vocal, the more you communicate. If I was to go to one of the parents in, the classes that my kids are in, well, especially my son, who's a bit older, I get on really well with a lot of the parents. So I could probably have a bit of a quiet word and say, look, your child is horrible. You need to sort them out.
You wouldn't say that. You
In a
could
nice
never
way.
say that to a parent. But ha 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 ha.
But I think that's really important as well, having good connection between parents as well, so you can have conversations like that, which aren't easy. But what's your opinion on it?
I would say, again, it's about educating your child, making your child confident, we're not only talking about children, making ourselves more confident and able to deal with situations, able to report to higher authorities. And again, what we were saying, that we shouldn't think that we're causing trouble by reporting it.
Yeah.
And not brush it under the carpet, because we as a community do that so much, and we need to learn how to step away from that and actually know my feelings do count.
And on that point, it's goodbye from me.
And goodbye from me.
Follow us on Instagram and Facebook, changing_suits, and subscribe so you never miss an episode.